In this very special episode of the Hybrid Coaching Podcast, I get to sit down with Director of Sport from HYROX, Matt Locke. Matt and I together worked on the new points qualification system along with the rest of the Elite working group to come up with how elites will qualify in the 2026-2027 HYROX season number 9. In this episode, we're going to take you through all the details, the nitty-gritty, and some of the decision basis behind why and how this system was set up, as well as some examples and what are the current standings. Let's make hybrid fitness work for you. How's it going today, Matt?
I am good, thank you. Coming to you from a very warm and sunny down under. It's summer where I am.
Nice. It is not summer here in Las Vegas. It is cool and possibly rainy over the next couple days.
Does it rain in Vegas? Sure.
Yeah. Well, not often. Over 300 days of sunshine a year here.
Not bad. Not bad. You win.
So I'm really excited. We're going to talk about the point system today. The point system that HYROX is releasing that begins the rankings for the majors and elite qualification system in the 2026-2027 season. So everybody can be aware, at least 9 months, maybe even 10 months out from the first major of that season, how they can qualify for it. We don't actually know yet when the first major is, but we know we have several months before it'll drop, so you have time to collect a bunch of races. And I'm talking with Matt Locke, who is, I don't want to get your title wrong, but it's the Director of Sport for HYROX.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So we interact a lot as the Elite Working Group, and Matt leads that from the HYROX side. And we were able to collaborate on how to resolve several, not issues, but how to improve the qualification around the elite side of the sport this past summer and this fall and into the winter, about how can we listen to the requests of the athletes and the coaches and make it more equal in terms of how people are qualifying.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I mean, the points-based system, which has been jointly developed with the Elite Working Group and therefore the elite community at large, is and ultimately was this time was at the request of the Elite Working Group. It was certainly an idea, a version of what has resulted was considered a couple of years ago, but for various reasons, which we'll get into, it wasn't the right time. The sport wasn't mature enough globally, let's say, and well represented enough globally. But now we believe it is, and now is really the perfect time to introduce such a new evolutionary and robust system, frankly. So we're excited to share it here.
Yeah, we actually, and that's one of the things we looked at too, is there are now athletes that have qualified for the Elite 15 out of multiple countries within each region, including APAC, including we saw South African athletes in the last major and the first two this year. It really has just expanded. And so I believe we both agree that this can address some, not necessarily issues, like I said, but improvements for the qualification.
I love that we're dancing around the word. Oh, they're not issues. Yeah, elephant in the room. I mean, let's talk about what it is that this, I guess, the ongoing discussion that's been had from day dot, I guess, about having a time-based measure of performance in different venues and so on. I mean, that's where we're headed, I think, as a starting point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what the first thing we want to ask is, like, if we're going to change something, what are the problems we're trying to solve? Let's lay out those. That's where we started at with this. So what are the problems we're trying to solve and why?
Yeah, sure. This is going to be very much a conversation
Yes.
because you've been as involved as I have. So I appreciate that we can bring both both viewpoints to it, I guess, from a HYROX side, from inside the sports side, but also then from the elite side, from a coaching and athlete perspective. I think that's really valuable for your listener or viewer, depending on where they're consuming this. But to answer your question, as you know, there were I guess, three main topics that we felt this would resolve. And the first is the main one, I suppose, which is all of the variables, the inevitable variables that we have at every different race venue on the planet. Those can be race course layout, how many laps is the run, how many corners are there, but also the environmental factors such as temperature, humidity, altitude, and they inevitably make it hard to compare athlete performance um, comparatively across all races with using a purely time-based approach. That's the main one. So the to put it into layperson's terms, I'm going to go race in Berlin because that's a fast course. I'm not going to race in, for example, Singapore Stadium, even though it's amazing. It's semi-open air and therefore quite humid. And those kind of discussions and comparisons between courses. I mean, I like to say it's democratizing all of the race courses, frankly.
Yeah, exactly. And so those are absolutely the things we looked at, like number of corners are adjusted per each layout, how crowded maybe or how wide some of the stations and some of the runs are. Like we noticed that how wide the burpees were gave more like how fast or slow those could be. Just as an example, Barcelona last year, where it got really crowded at the burpees, where a lot of people got there at one time during the LCQ. And
It was
so
it's the term we used. It was like we carpet bombed that
carpet bomb.
station of athletes, frankly, because it was
Yeah.
yeah, it was crazy there that time.
And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah, those are some of the things that could impact time. And like you said, I think one of the biggest factors is temperature of the room and humidity, as well as altitude. Like we know that there are several races happening in Central America, at Mexico City and other places that are 7,500 feet, over 3,000 meters above sea level. And so who's to say that those times there, they're never really as fast as, like you said, Berlin or London or these other ones, but who's to say those athletes wouldn't be able to compete with them on the same course? And so that's one of the things we looked at in terms of with the variations between courses, environmental setups, course layouts, and everything. How do we solve the time discrepancies where you might have a course that has one or two people on the men's side go under 60 versus like Berlin, where over 30 men go over under 60. And so everybody wants to go race that one because they think that's where they can get their best time. And it's not to like discredit those people. I always say on here that you are your best data point. So you are, if you run a 55, you are a 55 athlete. That is your ability. But factoring in where you ran it in terms of total field is really important because taking 10th place and getting a 56 minute, but taking 10th place in the race that you got a 56 minute in, is that really equal to somebody who wins a race in 57? And so that's important to think because a 56 and 10th place would have you, on the list or at least one of those current times for the Elite 15, whereas the 57 that you won the race in might not.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, we're still referencing Berlin, aren't we? Let's just
Yeah.
not forget towards the end of last year, London
Yeah.
single lap.
Yeah, London. I
Yeah,
mean, there was others. New York towards the end
yeah,
of last year. That also. So I think this is important, and I like that we're getting this out relatively soon after it had been established. With still time, there's still 9, 10 months for people, like we said, to accumulate points. Even though the last 3-ish months they would have been able to accumulate points as well, uh, just because it gives time to be able to see it and time for people to be able to understand where they're at and plan out their schedule.
yep, absolutely. So that was the main point number one, I guess, and that was for sure the main driving force. There are a couple of others that we considered, and certainly making sure that we have a very clearly defined framework that athletes can progress along to go from open to pro and pro to elite, just trying to remove any ambiguity for athletes seeking to advance in the sport in the end. And certainly this approach makes it much more clear and transparent. And there was no planned ambiguity or intended ambiguity with a time-based approach as we have today. So for sure not, but it does make it much more straightforward and digestible, I think, as a framework to see how they can progress along that path, and yeah, get involved at elite level.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about what are the points? How do people earn points, and how do what do they get the points for?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Now, what I would say is, we've been talking about this quite a lot already, and for sure, it sounds far more complicated when you describe it compared to
yes.
when you see it written down. So I'm conscious for anyone who is listening to this rather than watching it on YouTube, for example, um, it may sound quite complicated, but what's important to know from the get-go is that the races are tiered. So we have standard pro races, which if a winner of that would get 105 points, whereas the winner of a regional elite race would get 108 points. If you win an elite major, it's 110 points, and winning at the World Championships would be 115 points.
Yep.
So clearly, there's a weighting based on the level of race, and in the end, why would that be? Well, you could an elite race at a regional, you're likely to have a stronger field that you're racing against, and therefore placing in that race should have more weight attached to it compared to a standard pro race. And the same is true for a major, and obviously the same is true for worlds. But
Yep.
that said,
Yeah, and we went over this a little bit, actually, where that equal line was. I remember when we discussed this, I thought that like ninth or 10th place in a major should be equal to winning any random pro race. Others disagreed, and we ended up settling on fifth place in a major is equal to winning a standard pro race outside the major. So that's where the line was set. I actually have it here. So if you are watching, you'll be able to see where the criteria sits right now, but I'll describe it and go through it, and we'll talk about where these other placements come into uh, where they come in to that. So starting with the standard pro race, like Matt said, it's 105 points for first place and 100 points for second place. These are set values. So that is your win gets you basically, if you win, you get a 5 point bonus over the 100 point line. And then everybody else below that, we decided to go with a percentage of winner time, which means that if you finish first place time divided by third place time in 98.32% of the winner, you're going to get 98.32 points. So the closer, if you almost tie with second place, if you're somebody who almost ties with first place or something as well, you could end up getting almost 100 points. You get 99.99 points, right? Depending on how close it is. But what this also does is it introduces, well, how much is too much? What if first place just shows that they are a step above everybody else in the field? If there's one person that runs away from the race, we did have this happen. This isn't just like a random example. Over the summer in India, they were having their first race. Rylan went and ran it. Rylan won by I think like 10 minutes or 12 minutes or something. And what essentially that did is he captured the 105 points, but because nobody was within 90% of his time, the rest of the field was zeroed out. So 0 points would be awarded on that. And depending on what place you are, that percentage of time is actually reduced the further down the list you go.
yep, I could not say that better.
Yeah. So looking at this, you have the standard pro race is 105 points, like we said, 100, and then percent of winner up to eighth place. So basically, at most, eight people win points from a race. And then when you go to the regional, which we assume is a slightly higher quality race in terms of the strength of field, the first two positions would be higher than a first place at any standard race. Well, third and fourth would be about equivalent to a little bit better and second place at any standard race. So you can earn these small bonus points, but they're not big factors, but it will award points down to 12th place in the regional.
And really important to understand here is that sliding scale of percentage finish time against the winner's time, right?
Yep. That's really important, and also the fact that if somebody ahead of you, so if you are in ninth place and you finish at 81% of the winner, but say sixth place did not finish within 85% of the winner, sixth place and all the way down would be zeroed out on the regional. So everybody above you has to hit their line as well, and then depending on the place you're in, you have to hit your restriction time. And that's in the regional. And then the major, like Matt had talked about, 110 for first place, 108 for second, 107, 106, 105 for fifth place. So that's equivalent to a standard race, which in the end, we all had agreed on that anybody that takes fifth place in a major is probably winning their any standard pro race they go to. Because everybody who qualifies for the majors at this point would have won multiple pro races in order to get into the qualifying. So you know that the level of competition is very high at those events. Uh, and then so on down until 10th place is equal to 100 points. And then 11th through 15th are also percent of winner with the same time restrictions. They must, all the way from fourth place to 15th, they must finish within a certain percentage of the winner, depending on which place that is.
Again, sounds complicated, but
Yes.
actually, for anybody looking at this, it's quite straightforward, actually. And certainly from our timing team, who have almost finished working on what will come to the ghost points and so on. In the end, it's an algorithm which, once it's set and tested, becomes somewhat automated in the end. We just
Yep.
have to validate the data to make sure it is accurate, but it's quite straightforward, actually.
Yep. And then we talked about the Elite 15 World Championships, where they will be awarded slightly higher than a major. And the reason we set these pointed percentages here is third place at the World Championships was equivalent to a major win. So basically saying that if you win a major, it's equivalent to taking third or better at Worlds, with first place getting 115, which because we're eliminating the auto qualifier, this kind of allows a decay of points. If somebody's the world champion, they win first place, 115 points. But then say they're having a tough time, they basically get two or three races or about 6 months before those points would level themselves out and say, hey, your world championship got you these bonus points, but you're not automatically qualified after about this point because your average points would be lower um, after a certain amount of time.
Sorry, you just rolled out a nugget of information there, Anthony.
I did.
You did. So what you just said is that we're retiring the auto
Oh,
qualification approach, which is
yeah.
yeah, which is announced already. But that's a really key point, right? So the
Yep.
auto qualifier for next season doesn't exist because of this tiered approach to the different levels of races. So from beginning of the new season, auto qualification is gone.
I didn't realize that I had said that out of turn, but
Oh no,
we can
no,
go
no,
through.
it's public knowledge.
Okay. So, yeah, so that's why the point system awards these bonus points for higher placement in the majors and in the things, because there won't be, it's not anymore win a major, automatically qualify, or win world championships top three, automatically qualify. You just get a couple bonus points, but those bonus points kind of level you out. So it's not automatically qualified. So if you win the first major of the year, you're not automatically qualified for the later of the year. You need to get to the point threshold of whatever the Elite 15 is at that time in order to qualify for that race.
Which for singles is based on your five best race results over the rolling 365 days.
Yep. And so that's the next thing I want to go over is why is it five races? Because we went back and forth on this actually a lot on what's the appropriate value.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit driven both from what's too much, what's too little, um, which is more anecdotal in many ways, but also how to avoid the likelihood, the increased likelihood of tiebreakers, for example. But yeah, keen to hear your thoughts on that actually, because you're right, it was backwards and forward, different ideas, mixing it up in different ways, carving it up, testing it, back to the drawing board. to end up where we have for
Yeah.
singles.
And actually, this is probably the one of the biggest reasons why when a point system was considered a few years ago, it wasn't able to go through, is because the amount of races within a year is super important. So how many races are going to be this year? It was like 92 or 93.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
said that the current system could handle like 100, 110, and it has room for growth as the sport grows as well. But the reason we went with five is because if everything went, depending on what side you're on, perfect or imperfect, means that you could have 20 people have their five races all first places. With 100 races, that means at most you would have 20 people. It's the Elite 15, which means somebody could have five victories and be left out of the Elite 15. And so, how do we avoid that, or how do we come up with a tiebreaker to rank where they're at? So, the best way to do that was if we did three races, that number could be over 30 people, which
Mm.
means 30 people having three victories is just, there's already a lot of people with three victories before they even knew there was points coming. So, it's important that we had to do more than three. We looked at four, settled on five because six was maybe too many. Uh, we know that this year, with the four majors and the regional and world champs, that the elite racers would be racing, if they do everything, at least six times. So they could take one off and they'd still hit their five races, or they could just go to a standard pro race to get that fifth one if they need it. So it keeps the elite in the community racing multiple times, which I think is important to keep them within the racing amount. And not all of them are racing just five times. There was a couple elite people that only raced three or four times last year, but there were people that raced 14 times, either elite or pro races, like just a ton of them. We did iterations on basically several of the past seasons to try to figure this out. Ended up settling on five races because it seems like people that race six, seven times, they get multiple victories. When the elite racers do go to the standard pro races, they do end up winning or coming in second, so they're able to spread the points around. And I think it shows like a healthy mix of people being able to get it, and it lets the community tie in as well. Like, where do you actually rank?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, yeah, I appreciated how much time and energy went into settling on what something that sounds simple. Oh, it's across your five best races, but the depth of thinking and stress testing that went into that result,
Yeah.
yeah, it was significant and appreciated. Um,
I remember it was a lot of hours putting in trying to figure out the three race model because we thought originally three would be okay. And it turned into like, oh no, like it's gonna have to be more. And then we did four, and I was like, all right, let's go up, let's move up. Okay, it's five. Five looks like that has the right amount for people to race.
and as you said, considering how most people have been racing until now,
Yeah.
it wasn't going to suddenly mean the majority of them have to start racing more. The majority
Yep.
are already hitting that volume of racing or more anyway. And maybe it's those who have relied on the auto qualification in more recent years. Maybe it changes things for them, but it's an evolution of the sport, which I think everyone would agree is very, very positive.
It absolutely. And really, like, I think all the Elite 15 or all the ones that had qualified for Worlds, because we did check and see, like, is this lining up? We did like stress test and we did sanity tests on does this look right? Are these people that we know are doing well at World Champs? Are they the ones that are still high in this? And for the most part, it was like I think at most some of the men, maybe a few of the women have to add one more race to their calendar year in order to meet the five requirement, which should not be a big ask.
No, no, especially as you say, the number of standard races that are available across all regions these days. And
Mhm.
this year, we'll see. I mean, some of the regions, if I think about countries like China, we're going from three races to 10 to 12 races over the next calendar year. That's just China. America, for sure. We've
Yes.
seen what's happening there. Asia, we see what's happening there. So all of the regions are going to have significantly more opportunities for
Yeah,
athletes.
and I think that's exactly right. The density of races in these other regions are also increasing, and so I think that's important to factor in. Is like in the past, right? Europe would be like 50% of the world's races, and then the rest of the world had the other 50%. I think it's getting more level with how we talked about the number of races coming to each region.
Yep. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
another really important factor that I think we talk about is that we really try to consider and how to eliminate that. I think this was another reason why the system couldn't be implemented a few years ago is the pay to play aspect. We didn't want to come across as this is pay to play. And so people traveling just to find the best race that they possibly could that they think is the weakest. Um, and how we avoid that piece of what could happen if, somebody's like, I'm just going to travel to all the easy ones.
Sure. That was one of the main reasons 2 years ago when a points framework was considered that it wasn't implemented because 2 years ago it was a very different event day landscape to where we are today. That's the reality. So there would have been a risk, I think, 2 years ago that there would have been the possibility of those who could afford to and had the ability to travel to further, regions far away and somewhat easier races, let's say, with a lower strength of field. Um, but as we've just discussed these days, that's not real anymore.
Hmm.
The landscape has changed enough um, to neutralize the possibility of that
Yeah.
in any meaningful way.
Yeah. And really, is if with the five races, if somebody's trying to pay to play and they're like, oh, I'm going to go here to this race that I think is easy, right? One, they end up, if they win, they get their 105 points. And if they win by enough, the rest of the field gets blanked. So not a massive amount of points are just being awarded for nothing. And the other part of that is they would have to do that five times. If they can't win in their home region and they go out and they try to win five times somewhere else, we've already looked at there really isn't five races where there's not somebody strong enough to qualify in the elite field at. The one that we saw show up repeatedly is Gabe Heck was winning all the APAC races, the China, Japan, Korea ones. And I think he got like four of them at one point. So he still would have had to travel somewhere else. But if somebody is trying to go win, Gabe's been in the Elite 15 on the time-based qualification before. Like they would still have to go race him. They would have to prove that they can beat somebody who's been there before in order to secure those points. So like there's not big discrepancies between the athletes from different regions anymore. And like we said, there's already like the South African contingent who are performing really well, especially in this last elite major.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And also, given um, the change that's coming for next season, I think we'll see more of the ANZ athletes. They
Yes.
also be more frequently in Asia racing.
Yes.
They're well within reach. Time zone is minimal. Cost is lower, and so on to get their races up. But also the other consideration for the pay to play idea of gamification is that we should probably talk about the tiebreaker approach in the
Yeah.
strength of field because that's where that really comes into its own. If someone really did try and gamify it, um, that can become a critical component for consideration of strength of field. Um,
Okay.
so
So
question for you, actually. So we get a tie-break situation,
yeah.
and I personally love what we settled on as
Yep.
the tie-break. I know initially we almost defaulted back to, oh, well, let's look at times then. It's like, no, we can't. We've gone away from time. And so
We,
let's stay
we
true to the point-based approach. So yeah, in your words, how would you describe the strength of field tiebreaker approach?
Right. So, like you said, we went through other iterations. We almost tied it back to time, and then we're like, "That's what we're trying to get away from. Let's ignore that." Uh, we almost went through head-to-head records as like if you want to have tiebreakers, it has to be head-to-head records. That got super complicated super fast, and so we kind of had to move away from that. And so what we ended up doing is the strength of field. is based on the amount of points that are at the start line of a race. So if somebody wins a race that has, I mean, I don't know how many we'll say, we'll just say like 2,000 points are on the start line versus if you're trying to find an easy race, and you go somewhere that you don't like, nobody else has points and you're the only one with points. So you're sitting there with 480 points. Your win, when compared to the win of somebody that won a 2,000 point race, head to head, you lose the tiebreaker. So your win is essentially valued less than the win of somebody with a stronger strength of field.
Yep.
So when it comes down to the bubble athletes and people saying, "Oh, I have two wins and three second places, I'm set," like, but you took your two wins and say you blanked the rest of the field and nobody else had points, and you go in and you have what is that? Three second places and two wins would be 510 points, which actually we in the past we've looked at if you can crest that 500 in past seasons, you're kind of in the Elite 15. But we'll just say 510. If you have 510 points and somebody else has 510 points, but they won their race against other athletes and you're sitting 15, 16, and they won their race against other elite athletes that had points, and you won your race in the field that didn't have any other elite athletes with any points, so it's only your points, they're going to jump you and win the tiebreaker.
Absolutely. And to be clear, um, we'll come to it, I know, but to have points means you have got an athlete license.
Yes.
And importantly here, it's not just on the start line, they start the race. They go across the timing loop. So
Hmm.
it's not they registered for the race. Though if they just register but don't turn up or don't start, their points don't count. It's literally only for the license holders who start the race. They go
Yes.
across that timing loop, across all of the waves at that event. So if we have
Yeah.
multiple pro divisions across multiple days, it's the cumulative total of all of those points at that event.
Yep. And we actually looked at that. We did consider the start line and then say, oh, it's only those that finish and do the finish line. But it came across as, well, somebody might be trying to help their friend out and drop out of the race, or they like somebody with big points. So trying to get away from that and avoid the gamification of the point system.
Yeah, and as with any system, I guess time will tell next season whether we have
Yeah.
created a loophole that someone's going to find. That's inevitably the way, right? But we've prodded and poked this pretty hard, and once we, as the sort of the founding team, which includes obviously yourself and the other members of the elite working group, um, I then handed it over internally, cold. They knew it was coming, but I handed it over cold. They hadn't been involved in the development of it to our timing team, who really live and breathe this stuff and have years of experience. Um, literally now millions of, well, literally lots of millions of data points from timing systems at all races, and that the experience that comes with that. And then their task was break it, find the bugs, find the weaknesses, stress test it, try and break it. And they took their time, and they really did. They were ethically hacking it, I suppose. And they came back with nothing but it's robust, it works, it's good, we like it, we can implement it, and it's robust, it's good. We couldn't break the logic of it.
Yes.
Um, and so obviously that, and as you mentioned earlier, we'd gone back with multiple seasons, actual data, plugged it in and stress tested it that way to see, well, what does that look like? There's some unintended outcomes as a result of this, and the answer was no. What was interesting, I guess, of course, we did see what would have been shifts because there were athletes who got injured or didn't do the 5 races. So of course that moved them down the theoretical leaderboard, but those were the reasons why, not because the point system fundamentally changes the the overall ranking of that historical data.
Yeah. And that's something you'll see too, is that like, just for an example, one of the things we noticed is that Hunter would be lower just because he only had 4 races, but he was the top 4 race person, but he would be almost above some of the lower 5 race people just because of the he had big swings with his points that he could almost catch people that had 5 races. Um, but because he didn't run that fifth race, he really just had to be on a start line and finish, and he probably would have been leapfrogged up. But those were some of the things we looked at and saw. So, getting into how to accumulate points. We talked about the athlete license. So that's the new introduction this year. The points are tied to when you got your athlete license. So you could not accumulate any points until you're at the date after or the days after your athlete license is dated. Um, so that's going to go back to September 1st, 2025 when it was released. Any race that the points are no longer ghost points. So anytime before that are the ghost points that are considered, and we'll talk about why those are. But anytime after that can be real points if you've had your athlete license up to there.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we've got, at the time of recording this, we're approaching 350 athlete licenses. So I think the message is out there. The
Yeah.
regional championships help to give an education around it, but I think generally speaking, it's now becoming more understood. Um, but if you are someone who wants to or aspires to be part of the elite racing and you don't have a license yet, um, then you can go to elite.hyrox.com and apply for your license there online. There is a cost. It's just over €200, I think, with the tax. Um, and I know there was a little bit of when we first started that, there was a bit of noise about we're gouging, it's about the money. I think anyone can do the math and go 300 and whatever, 20 times €200. It's not about the money. But it is an important component. And one of the reasons we have the license, one of the leading reasons at this stage, is because that enables us legally to conduct doping controls. And I think it's one of the least understood aspects of the sport so far for the layperson. And that's okay, because if you've never been a professional athlete or subject to doping controls, how could you understand it or know the nuances of it? But an athlete license includes signing an arbitration agreement, which means you submit yourself to doping controls, and in our case, in line with the WADA requirements, and also agree to be banned by the results of that testing. And it's a legal document. And for sure, we've had increased volumes of doping controls, including outside of the elite races this season so far, and that's something will continue as well. So that's why the license is really important. And that's how, if you haven't got one and you aspire to be part of the elite racing series, then for sure you need a license, and that's how you get one. And the processing
Yeah.
time is quite fast. Working days normally within 2 working days. So if you've got a race coming up in a week, if you could, you can apply on Monday, and with an email to maybe flag that you are racing the current coming weekend, we can turn it around quite quickly. So
Yeah.
no stress.
And it really does help, guys. If you don't know yet, people have been tested at races already with athlete licenses at the standard pro races. It is something that is coming in and is controlling the idea of this is a professional Olympic level sport, and is really making sure that the sport is and stays clean. And so athletes cannot just time like, oh, I'm going to try to only be clean if they're dirty, clean for an elite race. They need to be clean for their qualifying races as well. Um, and with as many as there are, and as many as they have to do, including those five, like hopefully it dissuades anybody that's thinking about trying to do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've made it clear. I mean, we have our Olympic aspirations, but um, regardless of that, we are evolving, and we will move to out of competition testing, of course. So anyone with an athlete license would then be submitting to and agreeing to out of competition testing as well, which is somewhat the gold standard. It's quite onerous. I mean, had a number of athletes pushing us for that, and I love that, frankly. Um, but it's also a little bit be careful what you wish for, because it's quite onerous depending on which framework we use. It does actually, yeah, I mean, for example, under the Adams system would mean you have to nominate an hour, the same hour every day. You get to choose the hour between 6 and 7, for example, where you have to be available wherever you are in the world, and be available for testing. And if you're not, and they turn up for testing, that's a missed test, that can be considered as a failed test.
Mhm.
So quite onerous. But that's, if you want to be part of a professional sport, that will become part of what's required. And I think
Yes.
most people welcome it.
I I agree. Yeah. Um, all right. So before I go on, I guys, I did look at this and I've done the math on right now some of the standings and at the point of this episode where the points are. Obviously, we're only looking at September forward, and I actually did what the ghost points would be as well from January to January. But the September forward one, you'll see only a few people have 5 races already, which is wild to me that they've already ran 5 races in the last like 3 months. Um, and I don't have like who has the athlete licenses, so it's not going to be perfect. But one thing I want to talk about is the ghost points and what are the ghost points and how do they affect everything right now? So, uh,
Sure. I mean, do you want to take it? Go for
well,
it.
I can start with it and you can correct me because I believe the ghost points are any points accumulated basically before September 1st. So they won't be shown on like the actual standings, but they're being used because you can't if we just started the points from zero, then basically all these first races they would lose any tiebreaker because people don't have points yet. It's their first race. They don't have any points on the start line. So we're using the ghost points that we're calling the ghost points as okay, when you race, these are the amount of points that you have going into the race. So if it comes to a tiebreaker, you would uh, beat, a March race that had less. But they're not used for anything else besides that right now in terms of the rankings. The rankings are only going to be your points from September 1 forward that are basically your non-ghost points.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, the ghost points won't be published on the leaderboard, but if they come into effect and they have to be used to determine a tiebreaker, then absolutely, that data would then be absolutely shared transparently for all to see.
Yeah,
There's just no purpose to having them displayed on the leaderboard because they're only relevant in a tiebreak situation.
that's right. So, guys, I did my best here to go through all the races from 2025 and the ones from January or September, January forward and September forward. Uh, when this episode is released, by the time you're listening to it, I should have a post on my Instagram if you want to go look at it about what the points are. But currently standing, I believe I should have shared my
I haven't
screen.
seen it, but
Yeah,
I mean,
these are the people. There's only 3 women so far that have ran 5 races, so obviously they're at the top of those. And then so it ranks them based on what races they have ran and uses their best 5. There's already somebody that's ran 8 races or 7 races, and they're sitting at the top of the leaderboards right now. And then all the way down to 3 races. And so this is from September 1st, moving to the current mid-season HYROX break, we'll call it. So this is you can see where everybody is. Like just as an example, Joanna's sitting at the top of the 2 race people with her 2 wins, but right, she's not going to get above that until she starts filling out. But by the end of the season, when the next season starts, she will have 5 races, even if she only does one more major, the regional and worlds. Those are her 5 races, right? And the same thing, and that's assuming that they don't go run pro races, which some of the athletes will go run pro races. So you can see where everybody's sitting right now, and it kind of is a sanity check. Are the people you expect to be near the top of these at the top currently? And yeah, they're all elite athletes that are sitting at the top of every level right now. And then on the men's side, same thing. Charlie Botterill, he runs a ton, right? So he already has 5 races in. Jack Driscoll already has 5 races in. So you can
Charlie
see
would have
like,
done that in one weekend, wouldn't
yeah, Charlie does. He did 5 in a weekend. Oh, that's a good point though. We should talk about is what if I run the same event twice in a weekend?
Sure,
Yeah.
which is possible, right?
Yeah.
Yep,
So if I run on a Thursday and a Saturday or a Thursday and a Sunday, I am only awarded points for my best score.
correct.
So, and I'm not included in the other score. So if I take first and fifth, my fifth place is gone. I get my first place points, and then everybody
Yeah,
else is ranked based on that.
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Now, there's another situation that can happen since there's multiple events in the same weekend. What if I run, you know, call it uh, in Poland on Thursday, and then I go to Manchester and run pro on Saturday. So I have two races in the same weekend at two different events. Um, Realistically, if you won both of them, you win both races.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah,
So you
brilliant.
can do it if it's separate events in the same weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Which
Um,
is becoming more and more feasible given the number of event days per
yes.
event is increasing. So you could race on a Thursday and a Sunday at two different countries or two different, yeah, cities. Absolutely feasible. And you would
Yeah.
get points from both if you win or in
Yeah.
the ranking.
And so, like little situations like that are important just to point out that those type of situations can happen, and they would you would get awarded points for both of them. Another thing that we didn't talk about, but it's related to the athlete license, is if say the top eight people earn points and six of them only have athlete licenses. It doesn't mean that if you are in eighth place and two people above you don't have an athlete license, you still only get the eighth place points. It's just the people that don't have athlete license don't get points.
Yeah,
So you
exactly.
don't get bumped up to sixth place because of it, or to if first place didn't have a license and you took second, you don't get bumped up to first place. You still get your second place points. It's just they won't get any awarded to their license.
Yep, absolutely.
Right. All right, so just looking at the number of races in here, again, just the sanity check. Yeah, you have the current elite athletes sitting at the top of each of the thresholds of races. So Tim's at the top of three races, Cole Learns at the top of four races, Charlie's at the top of five races. So like people that have ran multiple times, you can already see like Dylan Scott's at the top of two races. You can already see that it's just kind of, oh yeah, they're winning the races. They're maintaining where they're at or above. Uh, in terms of ghost points, I don't have the men's
Good to
ghost
see the
points done
data.
yet.
So it's good to see. I haven't seen this before. It's good to see the reality of this.
Yeah.
So
And another sanity check here is that if you look at the ghost points, so this is current points and ghost points. So this would be current totals. You can see that, there's really only 21 people that have ran five races, and obviously they haven't won five races. So your threshold level at 15th right now is 502 points for the women. Which means like there's at least one win in there and maybe 4 seconds. Somebody would be sitting on that bubble if they have 5 second places. But you can see nobody's actually done that. Everybody has some level of percent of winner points in there, meaning they took third through eighth, which completely makes sense.
absolutely.
Easiest for the women.
And
This is
further validates the whole approach.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is updated for the women. I will post this for the men as well, but I don't have it completely done yet. So I don't have it to be able to be shown. But you can see it's kind of all the names you expect to be in there that have been performing well or being in the majors currently. And the only one I'd say isn't is Vivian and Sinead because they don't have five races yet. They would need to go get a fifth race. And I'm sure that all these people looking at it, like once they know they need five races, they're going to make sure that they have those five races at all times, keeping them healthy and locked in.
Yep,
All
that's good to
right.
see. And so certainly the official HYROX points leaderboard, which will just sit in parallel with the time-based leaderboard, which remains entirely valid until the end of this season, up to and including Worlds in Stockholm. But at least you'll be able to then see, because obviously, as you said, you don't necessarily know who's got a license or not.
Yep.
You know if they've raced in an elite race, they have a license.
Yep.
You don't know exactly who. And so I know that we're within quarter one of this calendar year. Those leaderboards from our side will go live and be visible and can be, yeah, pulled apart, analyzed, scrutinized.
Yeah. So
Everything they will be.
yeah, basically, I just want to make sure everybody knows what I just showed is unofficial. It
Yeah,
is
sure.
just
Yeah,
me looking at the point system and going by hand through all the races. And it absolutely could have mistakes in there because I don't know when people got their licenses and I don't know who still has their licenses. So it'll need to include those. But I wasn't able to pull that information, so I just assumed basically when I did the points, everybody had a license when they needed it, which is not the case. And I know it's not the case for a few different athletes, actually. So now what's exciting I want to share is what about doubles? Because we go into the point system, we got to talk about the doubles because the doubles part of the elite. It's very exciting, especially for the community to be able to watch the doubles. So, what is new on the double side? Because there are a few things new and there are a few interesting topics we had to take into account making the point system work for the doubles teams.
Yeah, that's true. In addition to that, and I think one of the really important points we need to drill home for the community so they really understand it. And of course, um, we've already advised all license holders of this requirement, but for next season onwards, elite double teams need to be the same nationality as determined by their passport. So we won't have mixed nationality doubles teams for next season onwards, basically. And that for many people doesn't change anything because they're racing with same passport holders, but it does change it for some of them, for sure it does. And so we'll see some shifts in pairings, let's say, for next season onwards, and probably as well for the balance of this season now that people understand, so they start accruing points rolling into the next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really important, but I think it's important to understand that that's not just for the like the Olympics that you need to be the same nationality. You have to have a passport from the same country. Which I asked you this question, I think, as well, is like um, you have the UK and you have Ireland. Does it matter where your passport's from, or do they like the Irish will need to have their own passport so they couldn't team up with somebody from Ireland and Scotland? It would have to be Ireland and Ireland, or Great Britain, or something, UK, UK.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Yeah, so the passport, yeah, so um, the Irish passport is not a British passport. And so therefore, yeah, we don't make those rules.
Yeah.
We're just applying those rules here. And so certainly the future Olympic aspirations is one of the motivations behind that. I have to say, in addition, we believe it's a much more spectator interesting sport at doubles level if it is same nationality. And that's somewhat anecdotal, but real, based on our experience of seeing what unfolds at Worlds or at the majors, where it is same nationality people racing. And particularly on the women's side, that's the case now anyway, at the pointy end of the stick.
Yeah,
Um,
so you led exactly what I was going to say is that just as an example for everyone, at World Championships last year, the top five teams were all same nationality. Lauren and Lauren were both USA, Lucy and Sinead were both UK, Linda and Viola are both German, Kate and Zara are both UK, and Margot and Charlotte Van den Lindenloos, were both the same country as well. And then on the men's side, the whole podium was the same country, right? You had Germany at the top, Spain second, and USA third on the men's side. So it already was same country for the teams that were um, performing well, but also capturing interest too. And we see that this year. So there's not a lot of teams that will be affected. I think the biggest team already qualified for Worlds to be affected would be like Tim and Alex. Um,
yeah. Yeah.
but they can find there's great partners from their own country that they can race with as well.
Yeah, one of the other considerations, and what we haven't said yet is if it's five best races for singles, it's three for doubles for
Yes.
this coming season. Historically, we've understood, and I think it's in part because of the mixed pairings, it's been a bit more challenging for the doubles teams to get the volume of races in together. And so even though we may end up with parity in the future, where it's five races for singles and it's five races for doubles, for the first season under this framework, we opted for three.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it will make it easier for them by being same nationality. And actually, from a very practical perspective for us, when we have different elite athletes racing with different partners and they qualify in different combination constellations. Actually, that makes it quite tricky from a roll down perspective because they can only race once in an elite race in a doubles
Yeah.
pairing. So if they've got 3 or 4 opportunities, suddenly we start losing chunks of rankings and we end up in ranks 50 and 60 quite quickly, which is not really where we want to be.
Right.
We want the top ranking athletes to be racing at the elite races. That's the whole point. So there's a number
And
of reasons for it.
yeah, and we see something similar this year. Like this year, as an individual, you have to have 2 race times, and as a solo or as a doubles, you only have to have 1 race time. Next year, it kind of just beefs up both of them to 5 and 3. But some people, with this time frame that they're being given, 9 to 10 months before the first major, they can go out and get those races they need to, right? It'll involve having the elite athletes into the community and the pro races even more as they go run these.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also leaning towards a time. I mean, elite doubles is still very new, but
Yes.
it's already starting to steer towards those athletes who will start to specialize in doubles.
Yes.
In the same way that some are specializing in singles. So at the moment, we still see a lot of the elite singles in elite doubles, and I'm happy. I hope that continues because obviously they're the fastest athletes. But at some point, we might see a shift. We'll start to see a shift where, and I think even next season, we'll start to see the evidence of that, where some athletes go, you know what? I'm going to focus. We are going to focus on doubles and make that our mission because it's a very different race, right? It's a very different race,
And
strategically, physiologically, which is exciting. It'll be exciting to see that unfold.
it is everybody, it is your doubles team racing, which will make it exciting also at the pro races to see these elite doubles teams racing in these pro races. But it's your double teams racing. So your solo points have nothing to do with doubles.
Correct.
It
Well,
is,
we looked at that, didn't we? We looked at
yeah,
in understanding that it was unlikely to get 5 double races. For now, at least in the season. And therefore, do we take X number of their single results from that 365 day and then their doubles, but weight the doubles so that had a greater aim and so on. And it started getting A, quite complicated, but B, it also detracted from the spirit of it's the doubles team that we want to, in the end, it's the performance of that combination of athletes within the 365 rolling days. It should be based on their combined performance. And so
yeah,
that we landed on not considering any of their singles results.
yep. And so uh, doubles teams need to go out there and get their races, and there's still enough time. I mean, for the elite doubles teams, especially ones that are already paired up with somebody from their own country, you're looking at they still have, by the time this episode is released, they still could compete in Phoenix. They could compete in their regional, Warsaw, and Worlds, and then there's those summer races. Like they have a plenty of opportunity between now and that first major to get those 3 races in, especially on the spring races that are being announced. All right. Um,
I've had some feedback actually about the some of the pairings that have been planned, maybe not announced yet, that are being done by sponsor
okay.
before knowing that nationality was going to be a requirement. And so there's a couple of people not that enthusiastic about it, but accept it. But it's interesting to understand as the sport's evolving and professionalizing and bigger sponsors, more sponsors are coming in and starting to influence those kind of realities. So the sport's evolving, not to prohibit that, not at all. It was never a consideration, but there's a ripple effect with everything.
Yeah.
I think it was Steve Jobs who popularized the saying is you can please some of the people some of the time. That should be on the wall of every HYROX office.
Everybody's gonna have like they think the world's against them or they think something about that. But I don't know if there's anything else to go over on this unless I want to ask you how and if the point system will be factored into the team relay or the elite relay or any relays in the future.
That's such a good question. And I'm assuming that the main focus of that is to do with the invitational relay at Worlds. And the answer is we are absolutely reviewing for sure how we establish which teams will race and who within the teams, who's captain, who gets invited to be part of the teams. It's been an evolving process in recent years, and we would like to be aligned with a points-based approach, but we'll have an announcement and share our thoughts on that and the approach in the very near future. But for now, we're still sort of thrashing that out. But it's actively on the table being discussed. So it won't take too long before we have an update for that.
Awesome. Okay, was there anything else that we missed in describing the point system and how it works for solo or doubles?
I don't think so. I mean, for sure people will dive in and sort of have to see it, I think, to understand really how it works and how many points for that and the percentile approach. I think a couple of key takeaways here are you need to have an athlete license to accumulate points, and you can go to elite.hyrox.com to secure that athlete license, as you can find out more information, generally speaking, about this whole framework with the shift to the points-based framework. And for those of you who are planning to race elite doubles, you have to have the same passport. And if you've got multiple passports, it's whichever one you choose to race with. You can only pick one. You can't hedge your bets. So pick one, stick with it. That's your nationality.
Yep.
Because if you race under different well, yeah, if you race under different passports, you'll be diluting the effectiveness of your points. So pick
Yeah.
one, your nationality will matter. And actually, a general message. Hopefully, there's elite athletes listening to this or would-be elite athletes. When you're filling in your registrations for your races, please you might identify as the country you live in, but it's based on your passport. So please, 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 because we're going to keep cleaning it up. We have cleaned up the leaderboard, and we will keep doing so. And very soon we'll have an athlete profile for you. So it makes it very hard to have different spellings of names, different email addresses, different all of these variables, which actually make it a nightmare in the back end. And so, for example, if you're a license holder and you're not always seeded into wave one as you should be, and you've met the time criteria for that, it could be that actually one of your results has slipped off the radar because of different nationality, different email address, different spelling of name, and so on. So really, please understand that there are implications to that, and just be consistent with what your passport is. And emails change. We know that's not going to be one of the data points for identifying an athlete, but for sure, name and date of birth and nationality are. So other than that, I think we've absolutely crushed it. And
Yeah.
yeah, appreciate you and the rest of the elite working group who have played a very active part in getting this to where it is. And I know we're all going to get peppered with questions, as we already are, about how it works and so on. And but we know where to direct people. We can answer those questions. And I think it's a really exciting evolution for the
Yeah.
sport.
I do too. And on that last note, that applies to women who get married as well. When you change your last name, or else you'll start accumulating points under two different profiles, and so you won't have as many points as you know. You need to make sure those are merged. So let HYROX know if you're changing your last name.
Yeah, thankfully, people are pretty good. If you're a license holder, you know where to send the email
Yeah.
already, and people are pretty good at when they see something currently that's not right. There's a time missing, for example, from a race, or people, yeah, athletes obviously are very focused on making sure that any discrepancies in our data is corrected. So keep that coming. And again, if you're a license holder, you know which email address to use.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much, guys. If you have any questions at all and you want to comment them below on our video or send a review and ask the questions, or you can email us, either me or HYROX. Is there an email they can send to HYROX with questions? An email address you want to?
So general questions would be to your local HYROX organization. So
Perfect.
normally info@HYROX, whichever one it is. So for sure, if you go to your local HYROX website, for sure there's a customer services email address that you can use there. Again, that's why I was being a bit specific. If you're a license holder already,
Yeah.
then you know where to send your inquiries, but I wouldn't want to share that here because we'll
Yeah.
just get flooded with requests
You'll
that are
get
not
flooded.
what it's
That's
for.
true. So, yeah, absolutely, guys. You can email me at hybridcoachingpodcast@gmail.com. And if I can answer the question, great. If not, I'm just going to direct you to your local HYROX email address. So, thank you very much for coming on, Matt. Is there anything else you want to say? We'll close it out.
Nothing other than thank you very much and appreciate your contribution to the sport, to the elite community. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to the Hybrid Coaching Podcast. If you'd like to reach out to us about coaching or programming, you can find us on Fitter, either James Kelly Hybrid Coaching or the Hybrid Engine. You can also find us on Instagram at jk.jameskelly or at the Hybrid Engine. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can also message us on either of those platforms or send us an email at thehybridcoachingpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's hybridcoachingpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.